The car is silent, freezing air seeping through every window. Hours stretch on. Blankets dampen, breath fogs the glass, and the night shows no mercy. The night begins with a sharp drop in temperature. The city streets are empty, lit only by the distant glow of streetlights and the occasional headlights of passing cars. Inside a small, aging vehicle, the windows fog slightly from the warmth of a single body trapped in the cold metal shell. The engine is off. There is no heater, no glowing dashboard to push back the bite of the air. Outside, frost begins to form on the edges of the windshield, thin crystals spreading silently across the glass, marking the first sign of the long, frozen hours ahead. Every movement inside the car is cautious. Shifting even slightly can disturb the fragile warmth trapped around the body, releasing it toward the icy metal walls. The blankets are thin, damp from a previous night's condensation, and folded into a tight bundle to conserve whatever heat they still hold. One arm reaches over them, the hand rubbing the other arm, trying to create friction, an impermanent form of heat. Every sound from the outside seems amplified. The distant bark of a dog, the soft thump of a car door closing across the lot, footsteps echoing on the sidewalk. Even when there is silence, it is not comforting. It emphasizes the isolation, the exposure. The person inside the vehicle is acutely aware of every risk. A single mistake, leaving a window slightly open. A blanket shifted could allow cold to sweep in, stealing the body's warmth faster than it can generate it. The mind begins to wander, calculating how long it will take for the night to end. Minutes feel like hours, each one stretching out under the weight of uncertainty. There is no comfort in knowledge. The human body produces heat, but it is not enough to fully resist the creeping cold. Awareness of that gap between what the body can do and what the night demands creates a constant tension. The confined space itself is both protective and threatening. It blocks wind and keeps out the faint rain that had begun earlier, but it traps the exhaled breath, fogging the windows and turning the interior into a miniature, damp greenhouse. Every inhale tastes faintly of condensation. Moisture settles into the blankets, soaking them slowly, layer by layer. The cold doesn't just creep in from the outside. It builds from within as wet materials lose their insulating power, silently weakening the defenses against the night. The person inside notices the first shiver, a warning that the body is beginning to struggle. Shivering is a signal, a small alarm, that the body is working harder to survive, and yet even that effort only delays the inevitable discomfort. It is a long night, and the early hours are deceptive. The cold has only begun to accumulate. The mind starts to shift its attention to small, almost imperceptible problems. The window latches creak as the wind brushes against them. A blanket slips slightly off the shoulder, exposing skin. The seatbelt buckle presses against the side, cold metal biting through thin fabric. Each tiny irritant is amplified in this enclosed, freezing environment. The body reacts automatically, adjusting and readjusting, but each movement releases more heat. The tension in the night is not dramatic or sudden. It is gradual, persistent, and measured in hours. The awareness of how long these hours will last becomes almost unbearable. Sleep is a possibility, but it is tentative, shallow, constantly interrupted by the cold and the uncertainty of the environment. Time stretches. Outside, the city's pulse slows further. Fewer cars pass, fewer lights shift across the lot. The stillness emphasizes the isolation. The person inside the car calculates how long it might take for morning, and the hours feel heavier with each passing minute. The blankets cling to damp clothing. The metal of the car radiates the night's chill, and the quiet becomes a constant companion. Even small noises, distant footsteps, the flap of a loose sign in the wind trigger a brief tension, a reminder that this night is not only about cold but about exposure, about being unprotected in a fragile bubble of survival. There is no mastery here, only the quiet calculation of endurance. The question is simple, unspoken. How many hours until morning, and will the body survive them? The night has only just begun, and every detail, every breath, and every movement carries weight. As the night deepens, the frost on the windows thickens. spreading across the glass like a delicate, crystalline web. Inside the car, warmth is trapped in pockets, unevenly distributed, clinging to the body wherever blankets have remained in place. Every exhaled breath adds to the moisture, coating the interior with a thin layer of dampness. The air smells faintly of metal and condensation, an odor that lingers and intensifies over time. The person shifts slightly, careful not to disturb the limited heat that has collected around the core of the body. Even small movements are deliberate. Each adjustment can be a minor gamble, releasing a pocket of trapped warmth, disturbing a damp blanket, exposing skin to the increasingly cold metal beneath. The clock ticks slowly, though the passing hours feel distorted, elongated by the monotony of confinement and the pressing awareness of vulnerability. Outside, the wind picks up. It rattles the edges of the car, making the body feel even more exposed. The slightest opening a poorly sealed window, a gap in the door becomes a potential pathway for the cold to seep inside. The night stretches in long, unrelenting increments. Thoughts drift between practical calculations and uneasy observations. The body is attempting to conserve energy, slow metabolism, and retain heat, while the mind becomes aware of the accumulating fatigue. Muscles stiffen, joints ache, and the shivers come in unpredictable waves. They are warnings, subtle but insistent, signaling that the body is straining against the environment. The tension is quiet, but persistent. There is no heroism, only the measured endurance of minutes and hours, each one a test of survival by simply lasting. Small discomforts become increasingly significant. A damp sleeve clings to the skin, cold metal presses against the shoulder, and the faint vibration of distant traffic echoes through the thin frame of the car. Each sensation, minor on its own, contributes to a cumulative strain that is both physical and mental. The mind notices every detail, the small leaks of heat, the wet blankets, the growing numbness in extremities. Outside, noises take on new weight. A distant dog bark becomes a potential threat. The slamming of a door sends a jolt of awareness through the body. In the quiet, these small signs of movement feel amplified. Reminders that the outside world is unpredictable, and that the car, though protective, is fragile. The hours continue to pass. Dawn is not yet near, and the night seems interminable. The interior of the vehicle is both refuge and prison. The confined space limits exposure to the wind and the cold air, but it also concentrates the dampness from exhaled breath. Windows fog completely, reducing visibility to near zero. Condensation drips onto surfaces and blankets, each drop a reminder of the slow deterioration of comfort. Shivering intensifies in unpredictable cycles, leaving patches of the body stiff and aching. The mind oscillates between attempting sleep and remaining alert. Each noise or movement from the outside triggers subtle reactions, adjusting position, checking the blanket layers, pressing closer to the warmer sections of the car. The night is a series of micro-decisions, each one measured against the persistent unknowns of what could go wrong. Time is the primary adversary. Midnight passes, but the body is unaware of its progress. Hours are marked only by the gradual worsening of conditions. The temperature continues to drop, and the limited warmth retained in the blankets diminishes. Moisture accumulates steadily, creating damp spots that steal more heat. The shivers become longer, more pronounced. The body is working harder, yet the environment is unyielding. Each breath, each movement, each adjustment is calculated in subtle ways. How to preserve warmth, how to remain insulated, how to avoid fatigue. Outside, the city remains indifferent, silent except for occasional passing vehicles, distant sirens, and the rustle of wind through empty streets. The car is a fragile barrier, a temporary cocoon holding the body in a precarious balance, dependent entirely on endurance and the slow, relentless passage of time. By the early hours, the cold has deepened further. Frost now thickly coats every window, glinting faintly under the intermittent glow of streetlights. Inside the car, the warmth is patchy and uneven. The blankets have absorbed moisture, pressing against the skin and sapping the little heat that remains. Limbs are stiff and difficult to move. Fingers and toes tingle with numbness, a subtle warning of the body's struggle to maintain temperature. Every minor adjustment becomes a conscious effort, shifting a shoulder, moving a knee, repositioning a blanket. Even small motions risk releasing accumulated warmth into the metal frame of the car. The body reacts instinctively, curling tightly, seeking to preserve the fragile heat that still lingers around the core. The hours stretch on slowly, each minute amplifying the sense of vulnerability. Outside, the night is quiet, but nothing feels safe. A passing vehicle throws a flash of light across the icy windshield, momentarily revealing the interior. The sudden exposure is brief, but enough to trigger heightened awareness, reminding the occupant of how fragile the protection of the car really is. The mind oscillates between observation and worry. Thoughts drift to the practical consequences of each decision, where the next movement might release heat, how to shield exposed skin, whether it is worth adjusting the blankets now or waiting. It is a constant, quiet negotiation with the environment, one that demands attention, yet leaves the body increasingly exhausted. Moisture has become a pervasive threat. The fogged windows now drip steadily, and the blankets are damp in places, reducing their insulating ability. Each breath contributes to a slowly worsening condensation problem, making surfaces cold and clammy. The floor is icy to the touch, transferring the chill upward with every slight shift of the body. The longer the night lasts, the more pronounced these problems become. The tension is quiet but omnipresent, a growing awareness that the small comforts the occupant relied on at the start of the night are failing gradually, almost imperceptibly, but inevitably. Every passing hour increases exposure and amplifies the physical strain. Sleep, when it comes, is tentative and fragmented. Moments of rest are shallow, punctuated by the cold, by discomfort, by small noises from the outside world. Even a distant siren or the squeak of a nearby gate triggers an alert response. The occupant wakes briefly, checking the blankets, pressing closer to retained warmth, readjusting position to reduce contact with cold metal. Each interruption, though brief, compounds fatigue. Mental focus becomes dull, senses sharpened only by the instinctive need to survive. The body is in a continuous, low-level state of tension, balancing warmth and energy conservation against the relentless progression of the night. The middle hours of the night are deceptive. The initial shock of cold has passed, replaced by the slow, grinding pressure of sustained exposure. Fingers and toes are stiff and achy. Muscles cramp occasionally, and the constant dampness wears down the insulation. The mind remains alert, aware that the smallest lapse could worsen the situation. Each movement, each adjustment, each breath carries weight. Outside, the city remains indifferent. Occasional headlights, distant sirens, and the soft patter of wind against the car serve as reminders that the world beyond the metal shell is unpredictable. Inside, the occupant is left to endure, managing discomfort, conserving energy, and quietly measuring time against the unknown duration until morning. The night has become a continuous, tense rhythm of observation, adjustment, and endurance. Minutes are measured by bodily reactions, shivering cycles, the spread of dampness, stiffness in joints. The environment is unyielding, forcing constant vigilance. There is no mastery, only the ongoing struggle to maintain warmth and alertness in a space that offers limited protection. With each hour that passes, small problems compound. Moisture builds, blankets lose their effectiveness, fatigue accumulates, and the mind grows weary. The question remains constant, unspoken yet urgent. Will this fragile equilibrium hold until the first light of dawn? As the night progresses toward its deepest hours, the cold inside the car becomes more relentless. The frost thickens on the windows, forming opaque sheets that trap the occupant in a dim, enclosed world. The blankets, once somewhat insulating, have become damp and clingy, offering only limited warmth. Every part of the body feels the strain. The fingers curl involuntarily from the chill, toes are stiff and tingling, and even the core feels slightly numb despite every effort to preserve heat. Small adjustments are made cautiously, each movement weighed against the risk of releasing precious warmth. The body reacts in cycles of shivering and tension, trying to generate heat while simultaneously conserving energy. There is a quiet awareness that the night is still far from over, and that the most dangerous hours may lie ahead. Time has begun to feel distorted. The clock outside is unseen, and minutes stretch indefinitely. The occupant gauges the night not in hours, but in sensations. How long since the last small shiver? How long since a blanket slipped against the shoulder? How long since the dampness crept further into the clothing? Each passing interval amplifies the sense of exposure. Outside noises the distant hum of engines, occasional footsteps. The rustle of wind through nearby trees seem louder, sharper, more unpredictable. Even when all is silent, there is tension, a heightened awareness that anything could change at any moment. The mind cycles between observation and imagination, anticipating potential dangers, calculating risks, and quietly testing endurance. Every sound and motion, however faint, reinforces the fragility of the situation. Condensation now forms a persistent layer on nearly every surface inside the car. Droplets collect on the windows, pooling along the edges, dripping intermittently onto blankets and clothing. The dampness slowly undermines the insulation, and the occupant can feel the heat being stolen away inch by inch. Even breathing becomes a minor struggle, as each exhale adds more moisture to the already heavy air. The interior feels both protective and hostile. It shields from the outside wind, yet it amplifies the discomfort of the cold and the dampness. Muscles ache from maintaining the curled, compact posture necessary to retain warmth. Fingers and toes respond with occasional tingling spasms, reminders that the body is under continuous stress. Each movement is deliberate, carefully balancing the need to readjust with the risk of losing heat. The middle to late night hours bring heightened awareness of limitations. The blankets and clothing no longer provide uniform protection. The damp has spread unevenly, leaving patches where cold metal presses directly against the skin. The body struggles to maintain warmth, alternating between shivering and tense stillness. Small noises outside distant voices, passing vehicles, a dog barking trigger instinctive alertness, interrupting attempts at even brief rest. The occupant calculates every shift, every turn, every adjustment, but the cold seems to advance faster than any measures can contain it. The night stretches on, the hours measured in discomfort and fatigue, rather than in any clear units of time. There is no escape, only endurance, and a quiet, tense observation of how the environment continues to work against the fragile equilibrium inside the vehicle. The psychological strain grows alongside the physical. The confined space, the damp blankets, the constant chill, and the eerie silence create a sense of isolation. Thoughts drift to the long hours remaining, and the imagination often fills the quiet with worst-case scenarios. There is no heroic resolve, no clever solution. There is only awareness of the slow accumulation of challenges. The heat that once existed in small pockets has begun to diminish, and each minute of exposure feels heavier than the last. The occupant remains alert to subtle changes. How frost is creeping inward, how the blankets cling more tightly, how the air feels colder with every shallow breath. The night is relentless, and every sensation reinforces the central question that drives this quiet endurance. Will this fragile state hold, or will it collapse before the first signs of morning? The first hints of dawn are barely perceptible. A faint light creeps along the edges of the frost-covered windows, casting a weak glow inside the car. For hours, the night has been an unbroken sequence of cold, dampness, and tension, each minute measured in small, deliberate movements to retain heat. The blankets are soaked through in places, pressed tight against stiffening limbs. Fingers and toes have gradually regained some warmth as the body shifted subtly, but aches and stiffness linger, reminders of the prolonged exposure. The occupant stretches carefully, testing muscles that have been curled and still for the entire night, aware that sudden movements could draw heat away too quickly. The sounds outside begin to change. Early morning traffic hums faintly in the distance. Birds stir, though their calls are hesitant, subdued, as if they too are emerging cautiously from the night. Each noise is a sign that the hours of danger are slowly giving way to the more predictable rhythms of day. The person inside the car notices these changes, almost instinctively. The wind has dropped, The biting chill of the early night has eased slightly, and the damp air now carries a faint hint of warmth from the rising sun. Yet,